Hey guys, tonight we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most beloved bedtime lies in modern pop science. The myth that you only use 10% of your brain. You know the one, where someone claims that if you could just unlock the other 90%, you'd suddenly be able to speak 6 languages, solve cold fusion, and maybe even fold your laundry without getting distracted halfway through. You probably won't survive this, not because it's scary, but because the truth is so comfortably boring. Your brain might tap out from sheer cozy apathy. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it for you right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're tucked in now. The air is cool, the blanket's just right, and somewhere behind your closed eyes, your brain is doing what it always does, everything. It's tracking your breath, regulating your temperature, and trying to decide whether this podcast is soothing or just vaguely absurd. But here's the thing. Your brain is not some neglected attic with dusty boxes, labeled telepathy and forgotten calculus. The idea that you're only using 10% of your brain is like saying you only use 10% of your phone because the flashlight isn't on all the time. This myth, delicious as it sounds, has been repeated for decades. Some say it came from a misquote of William James, the American psychologist, who once mentioned that humans make use of only a small part of our mental resources. He was talking about potential, not percentages, but the numbers game was too tempting to ignore. Others point fingers at self-help gurus from the early 20th century. Folks who wanted to sell you a program or a pamphlet, or possibly a vibrating chair that promised total mental awakening. Because nothing says cerebral enlightenment like a piece of furniture that makes your teeth buzz. Historians still argue whether the 10% myth caught on because it offered hope. Who wouldn't want to believe they're secretly a genius, or simply because it sounded scientific and was easy to remember? Either way, it worked its way into culture, showing up in movies, motivational speeches, and a surprising number of awkward job interviews. Now you might be wondering, if it's so wrong, why does it feel kind of right? That's the sneaky part. You do have unrealized potential. You can improve memory, focus, creativity, but not because there's a giant hunk of your brain napping on the job. It's more like a gym. You already own all the equipment, but you're not using every machine at once every moment of the day, and that's probably for the best. No one wants a mental treadmill running while you're trying to fall asleep. Here's a mainstream fact to settle into. Even the simplest task, like reading this sentence or remembering your Wi-Fi password, activates multiple regions of the brain at once. There's no silent majority. There's no off switch that leaves 90% of your mind in the dark. The lights are on. Always have been. In fact, if you could somehow light up the entire brain at once, it would be a mess. Imagine every department in a company holding a meeting at the same time, in the same room, all shouting over one another. The finance team is arguing with HR, while marketing sets something on fire and accounting throws spreadsheets into the air like confetti. That's your brain on 100% activation, loud, bright, incoherent, and probably followed by a blackout. Nap you didn't ask for, but let's ease back into the myth's appeal. Because even though we know it's false, there's something comforting about the idea that greatness is sitting quietly, waiting to be discovered. It gives you a reason to buy that puzzle app or take up Sudoku or believe that maybe, just maybe, your brain has been holding back because it was being polite. And sure, fringe theories love to play in this space. Psychic abilities, telekinesis, superhuman learning. The 10% myth has been used to justify everything from clairvoyance to alien communication, which is fun, especially if you're into that sort of thing, but also firmly in the land of science fiction. One quirky little brain-related tidbit. Dolphins have larger brains than humans in terms of raw weight. Some researchers once believed this meant they were smarter. Others pointed out that dolphins also use their brains to echolocate and navigate underwater like submarine ninjas. Historians still argue whether brain size actually correlates to intelligence or just to the number of fish you're expected to outsmart. So here you are lying quietly, letting that big, busy brain of yours do what it does best. Absolutely everything and absolutely nothing depending on the moment. You're not using 10%. You're using what you need, which right now is just enough to breathe, listen, and maybe wonder how many neurons it takes to ignore your email inbox. You don't need more brain. You don't need hidden reserves or secret circuits. What you've got is already astounding. It's managing your heart rate, filtering background noise, building dreams from nothing, and quietly reminding you that you did, in fact, lock the front door. Maybe, so you sigh, and as the crackle of imagined fireplace embers fills your mental space, you let go of the myth. You don't need to be superhuman. You just need to be resting, present, breathing through the fog of half sleep and letting your brain do what it was always built for, being alive. You drift a little deeper now, sinking into the thought of your brain, not as a mysterious warehouse, filled with untapped powers, but as a humming landscape of activity. Everything you have ever felt, seen, wanted, or forgotten has passed through its folds. Not 10% of it, all of it. You can almost feel the soft weight of it resting behind your forehead, like a tired jellyfish that somehow knows your phone password. It is not hard. It is not rigid. Your brain, despite its impressive resume, is mostly water. About 3/4, in fact. The rest is a mushy mix of fat, protein, and a sprinkle of salt and sugar. Think of it as a floating meat cloud encased in your skull and constantly bathed in cerebrospinal fluid, like a spa session that never ends. You imagine yourself shrinking down, just enough to wander the soft pathways inside your head. The surface of the brain is folded and ridged, like the top of a tightly rolled cinnamon bun. Those folds are not just for looks. They are called gyri and sulci, and they increase surface area, allowing more room for brain cells without needing your head to balloon to beach ball proportions. It is nature's way of being efficient and slightly grotesque at the same time. The outer layer of this organ, the cerebral cortex, is where most of the good stuff happens. Movement, sensory, interpretation, language, decision-making. It is your personal boardroom, newsroom, and art studio rolled into one wrinkly shell, and unlike that room in your apartment that still has unopened boxes from 2 moves ago, this space is always busy. Beneath it lie the deeper structures. The limbic system, which handles emotion, memory, and motivation, sits like a humming control center. The hippocampus, shaped like a seahorse, helps convert short-term memory into long-term storage. It is why you can remember the lyrics to a song you heard on the bus once, but not where you put your keys 10 minutes ago. Then there is the amygdala, small but mighty. It deals with fear and emotional memory. When your heart races during a scary movie, or when you suddenly feel anxious walking into a room for no reason, that is your amygdala flipping the switch. Historians still argue whether ancient humans had a larger or more reactive amygdala, since their days involved more saber-toothed tigers and fewer text messages. Lower still, the cerebellum. It is the balance master, the posture whisperer. It is the part of your brain that lets you walk in a straight line and keeps you from falling over when you bend down to tie your shoe. And though it makes up only about 10% of the brain's volume, it holds more than half its neurons. It is compact, quiet, and doing most of the heavy lifting without asking for praise. A mainstream fact worth curling up with: the average adult human brain contains about 86 billion neurons. That is a number so big it loses meaning. It is more than the number of stars you can see from Earth with the naked eye, and each of those neurons is capable of forming thousands of connections, meaning your mind is home to trillions of pathways, highways of thought, shortcuts of habit, winding alleyways of emotion. And yet, with all that traffic, your brain rarely gets jammed, unless you try to remember all your childhood phone numbers at once. Then it might stutter. One particularly strange discovery from history: Einstein's brain was preserved after his death. Not by request, but because a pathologist decided to keep it, like someone stealing a celebrity's coffee cup for science. Decades later, it was sliced, photographed, and studied obsessively. Some researchers claimed it had unusually shaped lobes. Others argued there was nothing extraordinary at all. It remains unclear whether Einstein was truly built differently, or just thought in a way we still do not fully understand. You let your awareness move now to the 2 hemispheres of your brain, left and right. Popular psychology paints them as a creative side and a logical side. But this is a bit of a myth too. Both sides communicate constantly. They share duties, collaborate on tasks, and make sure you can do something as basic as walking while singing. The bundle of nerves that connects them, the corpus callosum, acts like a neural bridge. Without it, your brain would be 2 roommates who do not speak, each doing their own thing, never realizing they both left the stove on. And yet, some rare medical cases have involved severing the corpus callosum to treat extreme epilepsy. The result? Patients whose hands could act independently. One hand buttons a shirt while the other unbuttons it. It is called split brain syndrome, and it is just as surreal as it sounds. Historians still argue whether earlier cultures had any sense of these divisions. Ancient Egyptians removed the brain during mummification, believing the heart was the seat of thought. Greeks like Hippocrates disagreed, naming the brain the source of intelligence. And somewhere between heart and head we still sit today, trying to decide which organ is really in charge when you cry during commercials. You lie still now, your own neurons settling into a low hum. Even at rest, your brain consumes about 20% of your body's energy. It is always on, always working. Not because you are broken or behind or holding anything back, but because life is complicated, and your brain is designed to keep up, not to show off. So no, you are not stuck using just a tenth of what you've got. You are using exactly what you need in the moment, which right now is just enough to listen, breathe, and maybe drift. And you are doing it perfectly. You find yourself gliding now through the endless chatter in your brain, a buzzing network of signals, a silent city where neurons never sleep. Picture them like gossipy little lightning bugs, sending messages back and forth with all the urgency of a group chat during a drama spiral, except instead of texting in all caps, they use electric pulses and chemical signals that happen faster than a sneeze. Your neurons are always talking, always, even in sleep, even in silence, even when you are doing absolutely nothing at all. They never log off. These tiny cells, long branching messengers, pass information from one to another across narrow gaps called synapses. A neuron will fire a signal down its length, release neurotransmitters at the end, and the message hops the gap like a spark, jumping from one wire to another. Dopamine, serotonin, acetylcholine. They are not just buzzwords from supplement ads. They are the brain's social currency. Each chemical says something specific, carries a mood, a memory, a command. They swirl around your synapses like perfume in a crowded elevator, setting the tone for whatever your brain wants to do next. You imagine yourself floating inside this electric fog, watching billions of signals flicker like stars. Not all at once, though. That would be chaos. Think New Year's Eve in Times Square, but inside your skull. In truth, your brain's brilliance lies in its restraint. It knows when to light up and when to go dim, when to whisper and when to scream. One mainstream historical fact to settle into. In the 1920s, scientists first proved that neurons communicate using electricity. They placed electrodes near a nerve and recorded tiny blips of current, like listening to the brain whisper secrets in Morse code. That discovery opened a new world of neuroscience, where thought itself could be mapped, measured, and eventually misunderstood by wellness influencers. A quirky fringe tidbit for you. In the 1970s, researchers briefly experimented with telepathy by wiring up two people's brains and measuring their waves. The goal? To see if emotions or thoughts could leap across space with no words. The results were inconclusive but wonderfully weird. Historians still argue whether the experiments were brilliant or just an excuse to expense a lot of tinfoil. Back in your own brain, things feel quieter now. You are not solving a puzzle or reliving a memory or planning dinner. And yet millions of neurons are still firing. Some are helping maintain posture even if you are lying down. Some are part of your visual cortex, quietly responding to the faint patterns behind your eyelids. Others are idling in your auditory system, keeping the lights on in case a sound stirs you awake. Most fascinating of all is how few neurons are actually needed to start a chain reaction. One thought, one faint emotion, one flash of sentience, suddenly, you are spiraling into a memory you have not visited in 10 years. That time your shoelace broke at the school assembly. That birthday party where you dropped the cake. That smell of crayons and carpet that instantly brings back third grade. The brain does not use filing cabinets. It uses webs. Everything is connected to everything else. Neurons form pathways, some fast and familiar, others overgrown and unused. The more you use a pathway, the stronger it gets. This is how habits form, how you can type your password with your eyes closed but still forget what you walked into the kitchen for. You imagine walking along one of these neural pathways like a mossy trail in the woods. Some paths are clear, others are foggy. You see how thought leads to thought, image to sound, sound to feeling. You remember an old friend, and with that name comes the color of their backpack, the exact way they said your name, the smell of the cafeteria that day, all of it packed into one quiet flicker of electricity. Your brain never stops mapping. It never stops adapting. Even as you age, even as cells change, even as memories slip, the connections are always in motion. Some fade, others strengthen. It is like a living garden of sparks, pruning itself, reshaping itself, never static. Historians still argue whether ancient philosophers like Plato and Aristotle had any concept of how intricate this communication system truly is. They spoke of the soul and the heart, of humors and essence and divine fire, but inside your head it is just salt, potassium, and a dash of calcium, moving molecules with the elegance of a slow-motion ballet. And if that does not impress you, just remember, your brain generates about 20 watts of electricity. That is enough to power a small light bulb. Or in modern terms, just enough to keep a nightlight on, while you wonder whether you locked the front door. So as you lie there with neurons still whispering, still flickering in and out of focus, you realize it is not about how much of your brain you use. It is how beautifully the parts work together. Thought is not a spotlight. It is a constellation, a firefly field, a murmuration of starlings shifting in air. And you, wrapped in your blanket, listening to these soft, sleepy facts, are just one more peaceful burst in that ongoing dance. You drift now into the vault of your own memory. It creaks open slowly, like an old wardrobe in an attic that has not been touched in years, and yet somehow the inside feels familiar. You step through this space and realize it is less like a filing cabinet and more like a collage that keeps changing its mind. Some memories pop up like overeager puppies. Others stay curled in shadows, half-formed, half-forgotten. Your brain's approach to memory is charmingly chaotic. There is short-term memory, where facts hover briefly before fading, like a phone number you say out loud 5 times and still lose, the second you walk into another room. There is working memory, which is like a mental chalkboard you scribble on while juggling 3 thoughts at once. Then there is long-term memory, the warehouse of personal milestones, random trivia, and the fact that you still know all the lyrics to that one song from middle school, even though you cannot remember your online banking password. Memories are not stored in single locations. They are distributed. A scent might live near the olfactory cortex, while the feeling tied to that scent is stored elsewhere. Visuals go one way, sounds another. When you recall a moment, your brain reassembles it like a jigsaw puzzle with slightly soggy edges. Sometimes it fits. Sometimes you are convinced your 3rd grade teacher wore green every day when in reality, you just saw her once in a particularly leafy dress. A mainstream historical fact here. In the 1950s, a patient known as HM underwent surgery to treat severe epilepsy. Surgeons removed parts of his hippocampus and afterward, he was unable to form new long-term memories. He could hold a thought for about 20 seconds, then it vanished. His case taught scientists just how vital the hippocampus is, not for storing memories, but for building the bridge to them. You walk now past shelves of old moments in your mind. First kisses, childhood birthdays, the time you fell off a bike and laughed or cried or both. They are not static snapshots. Every time you recall something, your brain rewrites it. It is a little like whispering secrets down a long hallway. Details get fuzzy. Names change, feelings shift. Historians still argue whether memory is more about truth or narrative. Are you remembering what happened, or the story you told yourself about it? One quirky example of memory's tricks. There is something called the Mandela effect, where large groups of people misremember the same detail, like thinking the Monopoly man has a monocle, he does not, or that a certain cartoon bear wore pants, he did not. Your brain fills in gaps. It wants stories to make sense even when they never quite did. This is why you can forget your own birthday for a second, but remember the smell of your childhood home in vivid detail. Emotional memories stick. Your brain tags those with extra importance. The amygdala and hippocampus work together, like co-writers of a drama series, flagging anything that made your heart race or skip a beat. It also explains why certain memories show up uninvited. A smell, a sound, a random flicker of light, and suddenly you are back in 7th grade, standing in the lunch line, wondering if pizza day means square slices or disappointment. Those echoes come from deep places, not because they are useful, but because they had an impact. And your brain, being the slightly overprotective narrator that it is, decided to keep them close. You may think memory is about storing things, but more often it is about letting go. Every day your brain prunes itself, trimming unused pathways, soft deleting details it deems irrelevant. If it did not, you would remember everything. Every face on every bus, every number you glanced at, every line from every commercial. It would be unbearable, like a browser with 4,000 tabs open and no way to close them. So forgetfulness is not failure. It is maintenance. It is your brain decluttering the attic so you can find the floor again. Historians still argue whether ancient memory techniques, like the method of loci or memory palaces, truly gave orators photographic recall. These techniques involved associating ideas with vivid imagery and physical locations. Imagine remembering your grocery list by picturing a loaf of bread on your pillow and a gallon of milk in your sock drawer. The stranger, the image, the more likely your brain is to hold on to it. You continue wandering through this personal gallery, the pace slow and easy. You peek into moments you did not know you still carried. A laugh shared in a hallway, the texture of a favorite blanket, the quiet panic of forgetting lines during a school play. Each memory has a texture, a tone. Some have softened with time, others sharpened, and still they are yours. And as you settle into the rhythm of recall, you understand, your brain is not hoarding memories. It is constantly curating, highlighting, fading, archiving, always building the story of who you are. Even if some of the pages get smudged or shuffled, you do not use only 10% of your brain. You use it all, differently, dynamically, unpredictably. Right now, as you listen, you are adding another page to that story. The memory of lying here warm and still as your brain gently walks through itself. You slide deeper now like a pebble rolling slowly through warm water, down into the part of your brain that does something strangely comforting and slightly eerie. It cleans itself. Not with a sponge or a vacuum or a deeply discounted cleaning service, but with a rinse that happens while you sleep. You might not be dreaming of waterfalls, but your brain is definitely enjoying a nightly wash. Every night when your body slows and your eyes close, the brain shifts gears. Neurons quiet. Conscious thought dims. And the cerebrospinal fluid, the clear liquid cushioning your brain, starts to move with more force. Like the tide rolling in, it surges through the brain's pathways, flushing out metabolic waste. Proteins, leftover neurotransmitters, and random brain gunk get swept away in this internal rinse cycle. This was a relatively recent discovery. Scientists only confirmed it in the 2010s, using live imaging on sleeping mice. They watched as this fluid pulsed through, timed with the rhythm of brainwaves during deep sleep. It was like watching the city streets get hosed down after a wild parade, a quiet rhythmic sweep carrying away the debris of the day. You lie there, feeling it now, not literally of course, but the idea of it. Slow, clean flow behind your temples, the whisper of water in the distance. Your brain is taking out its own trash while you rest, one mainstream fact that should put you at ease. This self-cleaning process may be connected to preventing certain degenerative diseases. The more researchers learn, the more they believe deep. Uninterrupted sleep might help your brain avoid long-term damage. It is not just about feeling rested. It is about long-term maintenance, like flossing, but for neurons. The brain has no lymphatic system like the rest of the body, so it developed what is now called the glymphatic system, a mashup of glial cells and fluid channels that work together like plumbing. This system was hiding in plain sight for centuries, working the night shift while you dreamed of waffles or wandered through abstract dream cities that never quite made sense. And as you breathe in slowly now, you picture your brain lit by moonlight, all its cells shifting into idle, tiny rivers of fluid slipping between the crevices. You are doing nothing, and yet the cleanup continues, like a well-tuned kitchen after a dinner party, wiped down while everyone else has already gone to bed. Here's your quirky tidbit of the night. Some scientists believe that yawning might play a role in brain cooling. You know that slow, wide-mouthed inhale with the eye-watering finish? It might be your brain's way of fanning itself, a kind of built-in AC. No one is totally sure, of course. Historians still argue whether yawning is social, contagious, thermoregulatory, or just a wonderfully awkward human glitch. You've probably heard the phrase sleep on it, and while it has become advice for decision-making, it turns out your brain actually does solve problems while you sleep, or more accurately, it shuffles them around. During sleep, especially REM sleep, your brain replays patterns from the day. It reinforces ideas, makes associations, and occasionally presents you with a solution in the form of a dream, involving a penguin and a calculator. This is one of the reasons sleep feels so much better after a mentally taxing day. It is not just about rest. It is about reorganization, like having invisible librarians sort through your thoughts, toss the irrelevant ones in a metaphorical recycling bin, and color code the useful ones. Historians still argue whether ancient practices, like lucid dreaming or sleep temples in ancient Greece, had any scientific grounding. These temples were places people went to sleep in hopes of receiving divine dreams that would offer healing. Modern sleep science would not call that divine intervention, but it would admit that the brain can, under certain conditions, reveal helpful insights during deep rest. And now, as you lie still, eyes closed or half-lidded, you might begin to sense that sleepy rinsing behind your forehead, the cool sweep of imagined waters through the spaces between your thoughts. The brain is quieter now. Your prefrontal cortex, that chatterbox in charge of analysis and planning, has slowly lowered its voice. In its place comes the quiet processing of the default mode network, that mysterious, meandering mental space where your mind wanders without instruction. You know the feeling. The dreamy drift while showering or walking, or lying awake and suddenly remembering something strange and specific. That's the default mode network at work. It is not off. It is on a different frequency. One that favors story building, identity making, and gentle mental detours that don't really go anywhere. And that is fine. Your brain is not trying to win anything tonight. It is not rushing to complete a to-do list. It is cruising in neutral, letting the night pull it gently along. And as this internal rinse continues, you start to feel lighter, like something is being let go. Maybe it's that weird thing you said at lunch 3 years ago. Maybe it is a fact you no longer need. Maybe it is just the weight of a day, being swept into the corners of forgetfulness. No need to reach for it, let it go. Your brain knows what to keep. You drift into a new thought now, a strange, glowing question at the edge of sleep. What would happen if you really did use 100% of your brain all at once? Not just the way you already do, switching between regions based on need, but fully, totally, simultaneously. Every neuron firing, every circuit live. No idle zones, no cool-down periods. The idea is tempting, like discovering a hidden turbo button inside your head. Suddenly you're fluent in 5 languages, solving quantum equations, and remembering where you put that one screwdriver that disappeared in 2019. You imagine your brain lighting up like a stadium on game night. But then the smoke starts to rise. Let's back up. Your brain is made of billions of neurons and they're always busy. But they do not all work at the same time. They take turns. They specialize. They sync up in rhythms, like a well-rehearsed orchestra where only some instruments play each movement. If every neuron fired all at once, that harmony would collapse into noise. And noise in the brain isn't just annoying. It's dangerous. Neurons fire using electricity, and those little jolts require energy. The brain already consumes about 20% of your body's fuel. Oxygen, glucose, the occasional bagel. If all your neurons went full tilt at once, your energy needs would spike through the roof. You'd burn out like a light bulb on a power surge. One mainstream historical fact: during epileptic seizures, large groups of neurons fire excessively and uncontrollably. The result? Convulsions, loss of consciousness, confusion. Seizures are not a sign of mental superpower. They are a neurological storm. So the idea that more brain activity equals more intelligence? Not exactly. More often it equals a shutdown. But let's say, for the sake of sleepy imagination, that you could somehow fuel it. That your brain had enough glucose to run every cell at once. What then? For one, the heat would be a problem. The brain already produces enough thermal energy to slightly warm your body. Turn everything on at once and your skull would turn into a microwave. Historians still argue whether ancient theories of brain heat were metaphorical or oddly accurate. Aristotle once claimed the brain's function was to cool the blood. He was wrong about a lot, but in this case, maybe not completely off base. Cooling would be an issue. So would sensory overload. You'd be seeing, hearing, touching, remembering, calculating, and reliving memories all at once. Every light, every sound, every feeling your body has ever registered could suddenly reappear in Technicolor. And that sounds like enlightenment, until it doesn't. You picture trying to brush your teeth while simultaneously writing a novel, solving a math proof, reciting your childhood address, and remembering the smell of cinnamon from your grandma's kitchen. Fun for about 2 seconds. Then your brain begins to short-circuit, overwhelmed by its own enthusiasm. The brain has systems to prevent this, like inhibitory neurons that work as bouncers at the neuron party, telling overly excited signals to take a deep breath and wait their turn. If those were shut off, chaos. An endless loop of messages racing through the same circuits. Thoughts echoing, sensations repeating. You'd probably pass out from the sheer overload. One quirky example of what happens when parts of the brain go rogue, the condition called synesthesia. It's when senses cross wires. People see colors when they hear music or taste words or feel textures from numbers. Some synesthetes describe it as magical, others exhausting. It's the closest real-world example we have of brain regions, lighting up in unexpected combinations, beautiful but disorienting. Historians still argue whether ancient mystics who claimed to see sounds were experiencing early documented cases of synesthesia or just having a really weird day. So using 100% of your brain all at once, it would not make you a superhero. It would probably make you very, very tired, possibly unconscious. Your head would feel full, like a traffic jam made entirely of emergency vehicles, sirens, lights, everyone honking, no direction. That is why your brain does what it does so well. It picks and chooses, lights up some areas, dims others. It knows how to focus, how to prioritize. You do not need your full visual cortex while brushing your teeth. You do not need your deep memory center while tying your shoes. Your brain is not withholding its power. It is managing it. Imagine living in a house where every light, every fan, every appliance turned on the moment you opened the door. Sounds impressive, but the electric bill would be horrifying, and you would probably go mad trying to turn things off again. Instead, your brain flicks on what you need when you need it. A living, pulsing efficiency machine. It's not lazy. It's just really good at pacing itself. As you rest now, you realize you are doing the very thing your brain was built for. Entering a lower power state. Dimming the lights. Letting some parts go quiet while others hum in the background. This is not using less of your brain. This is using it wisely. Your body still breathes. Your heart still beats. And somewhere inside, neurons still flicker. Not all at once. Not in a frenzy, but in a quiet pulsing rhythm, like stars signaling across space. You remain still now. The idea of full brain overload fading like smoke into the soft shadows of your mind. Your thoughts shift gently to something more comforting. The fact that your brain, despite its incredible potential for chaos, has built-in boundaries, quiet safeguards, a kind of calm internal referee making sure no one gets out of hand. You imagine these mental safety nets as sleepy gatekeepers, gently closing doors when things get too loud. Your inhibitory neurons are part of this. They keep the party in check. They hush the chatter. They help make sure your sensory input does not become a blaring concert when all you wanted was a sip of tea and a good stare at the ceiling. These little boundaries are everywhere in the brain. In the way attention filters out irrelevant noise. In the way your eyes ignore the curve of your nose. Yes, it is always there, because the brain edits it out. You do not need all the input all the time. The brain knows this. It makes sure you only see, feel, and remember what serves the moment. One mainstream fact to float on: the reticular activating system, a network deep in your brainstem, helps regulate wakefulness and focus. It is what lets you sleep through a humming fridge but wake instantly at the sound of your name. It acts like a doorman for awareness, deciding which knocks at the door of consciousness deserve attention. And your brain is very picky. It has to be. Attention is a limited resource. If you truly noticed everything all the time, you would never move. You would never decide. You would simply be frozen in the flood of information. Every crack in the wall, every itch, every hum, every shifting shadow. Paralysis by perception. So instead, the brain tunes most of it out. Like turning down the static to find a clear station. It lets in what matters, filters what does not. It is not always perfect. Sometimes the wrong thoughts slip through, like anxiety about that thing you said at lunch 3 months ago. But most of the time, the filters hold. You lie here now, letting those filters do their thing. No need to process the fabric of your blanket. No need to track the sound of your own breath. The brain handles all of that silently, slipping past your awareness like waves under a boat. There are other safety systems too. The blood-brain barrier, for instance, a tight seal of cells that protects your brain from toxins, bacteria, and anything sketchy floating around in your bloodstream. It is like airport security for your neurons, extremely selective. No liquid over 3 ounces, no weird chemicals without clearance. And just like the brain filters sensations, it also filters thoughts. Have you ever noticed how some ideas appear fully formed while others feel like fog? That is your brain managing cognitive load. It holds back entire rivers of information and lets you sip one idea at a time. It is not stingy. It is smart. One quirky tidbit from psychology. Your brain can fill in visual gaps without you noticing. There is a blind spot in each eye, a spot where the optic nerve connects and no photoreceptors exist. Yet you never see a hole. The brain simply guesses what is there. It paints in the background like a lazy but competent artist. Historians still argue whether early optical illusion experiments were science or parlor tricks, but they revealed this truth. Your brain edits reality constantly. This means that part of your experience right now is fiction, and your brain is okay with that. It has to be. Reality is too dense, too chaotic to be taken in unfiltered. So the brain massages it, trims it, makes it manageable. Not perfect, but livable. You feel the comfort in this. You do not need to notice everything. You do not need to understand every feeling or track every thought. Your brain is doing that for you, whether you are aware or not. Historians still argue whether meditation practices in ancient cultures recognize this filtering process. Monks who trained themselves to observe thoughts without reacting may have stumbled into a truth neuroscience is only now quantifying, that peace often comes not from thinking more, but from thinking less. And as you sink further into this restful stillness, you realize how gentle your brain can be when you let it. You do not need to push. You do not need to activate anything. Right now, the most powerful thing your brain is doing is resting. In this quiet, your safety nets hold. They filter the noise. They guard the gates. They dim the lights without your asking. You are not falling behind. You are not underusing anything. You are simply coasting on the calm waves of a system that has evolved for millions of years to carry you through this exact moment. No alarms, no overload. Just you and the quiet, and the cool hum of a brain doing exactly what it is supposed to do. Nothing more, nothing less. You glide now toward an odd and curious question. What would it feel like if every single neuron in your brain fired at the same time? Not figuratively, not metaphorically. Literally, all systems online. The entire network lit up, like a city grid where every apartment turns on every appliance at once. There would be no more quiet corners, no shadows, no stillness, just pure electric saturation. At first, it might feel like a rush. A flash of light behind your eyes, a warmth blooming in your chest maybe. Everything awake all at once. Clarity sharp enough to taste. You imagine hearing every sound around you. The ticking of your clock, the whisper of distant wind, your own heartbeat, and the creak of your joints. All layered together in impossible precision. You smell too much. You remember too much. Thoughts pile up like pages in a printer jam. It is too much. And very quickly, the wonder would dissolve into something else entirely. Because your brain, brilliant as it is, cannot handle full activation. That kind of flood does not create superpowers. It creates breakdowns, and not the good I found myself in Nepal kind. The kind where systems shut down one by one to protect what is left. In real life, the closest thing to this is a seizure. A sudden, uncontrolled burst of electrical activity in the brain. It does not make you smarter. It knocks you flat. Muscles contract. Consciousness slips. Memory fractures. It is not enlightenment. It is emergency. One mainstream historical fact. Seizures have been observed and documented for millennia. Ancient Babylonian texts describe them as spiritual episodes. In the Middle Ages, people believed they were signs of demonic possession. It was not until the 19th century that doctors started connecting them to brain activity, and not moral failings or lunar curses. But what if you could turn everything on without the downside? What if your brain's protective systems were temporarily disabled? Just for a moment, allowing full access? It would be loud. Emotionally, mentally, physically loud. Every memory, every association, every smell, every fear, every image, every weird dream you've ever had all at once. It would not be clarity. It would be cacophony, like a dozen radios tuned to different stations all screaming in your head. And as beautiful as it sounds in movies, unlocking 100% of the mind and suddenly knowing kung fu, the reality would be like standing in the middle of a tornado made entirely of thoughts. It is not power. It is panic. You imagine it now. The flood. You're sitting on a beach, and suddenly the tide does not just rise. It leaps, crashes, pours in from every direction. Salt water in your eyes, ears, lungs, fingertips. It would not feel like flying. It would feel like drowning. One quirky tidbit. In extremely rare cases, some people develop something called acquired savant syndrome. After a head injury, they suddenly show extraordinary skills. Perfect pitch, complex math, artistic abilities. Theory suggests these skills were always possible, but were suppressed by the brain's filters. Once the filters were damaged, the hidden talents spilled through. Historians still argue whether these bursts are truly new or just uncovered by accident, a glitch in the system, not an upgrade. But for most of us, the filters stay in place, on purpose. They keep the brain from burning out. They keep the noise down. They make it possible to think one thought at a time, to follow a sentence, to make a cup of tea without contemplating the meaning of steam. Your brain is not designed to run every process at once. Even computers throttle their performance when the processor gets hot. The human brain does the same. It downshifts, it idles, it takes micro naps. It creates slow rhythms to allow recovery. Deep breaths in your neural system that prevent the panic from taking over. Historians still argue whether certain ancient meditation practices attempted to touch that flood, not by force but by quiet. Instead of turning everything on, monks and seekers tried to turn everything off, to let the mind settle, to sit at the bottom of the sea, not ride the waves. You are there now, not at the top where the flood roars, but somewhere deeper, slower. The ocean of thought swells above you, but here it is still, here it is peaceful. You do not need every neuron, you do not need to activate the full network. You need just enough and enough to understand this moment, to feel your weight against the bed, to listen to your breath, to wander a little through the edges of consciousness without falling over the side. So instead of full activation, you allow the opposite. Quiet firing, gentle flickers, like distant lightning on a summer night. Barely audible, never threatening. It is enough. More than enough. The flood stays behind the dam. The filters hold. And you let go of the need to light everything up. Tonight, only the softest circuits stay online, and they are carrying you home. You let the flood fade behind you now. The rush has passed. No more blinding spark of every neuron screaming for attention. Just the gentle flicker of a few familiar thoughts, spaced out like sleepy streetlights on a quiet road. Your brain has returned to something softer, more manageable. A rhythm it knows well. Selective, efficient, quiet. And now you wonder, what happens if the balance tips too far the other way? Not a flood, but a freeze. What if the system goes dark, not because it is broken, but because it has become overloaded? This is where brain fog rolls in. That peculiar state where you are technically awake, but your thoughts feel like they are wading through oatmeal. You forget what you were saying mid-sentence. You reread the same line 3 times. You stare at your keys like they just betrayed you. Brain fog is not sleep. It is not exhaustion exactly. It is more like your brain has hit pause on all the high-effort processing. Maybe it is recalibrating. Maybe it is saving power. Maybe it just needs a moment to breathe. One mainstream fact about brain function is this: it works best with rest. Studies show that fatigue, whether from lack of sleep, dehydration, or overstimulation, slows down your brain's electrical responses. Your neurons fire, but more sluggishly. It is like trying to start a lawnmower with cold hands. Everything works, eventually. And then there is the opposite side again, that moment of overdrive. You know the one, when you are buzzing with information, flipping through tabs, multitasking like a caffeinated octopus. It feels productive, but your brain is not thrilled. It is just faking composure. Because when too many systems activate at once, the signal becomes noise. You are not remembering more. You are scattering more. The brain lives in this delicate balance between underuse and overuse, between too quiet and too loud. It is not built for extremes. It is built for rhythm, waves, pulses. The slow breath of thought, rising and falling in time with the body. One quirky tidbit for you. During intense moments of concentration, certain areas of the brain shut down, not light up, shut down. Parts of the visual cortex, for example, may go dim when you are solving a difficult math problem. It is your brain choosing to ignore distractions by literally reducing sensory input, a kind of selective blindness. Historians still argue whether this was known in some form by ancient thinkers who emphasized inner focus and the withdrawal of the senses. And here you are now doing something incredibly valuable to your brain. Nothing. You are not solving puzzles. You are not memorizing facts. You are not composing your grocery list or planning your week. You are lying still, listening, letting your thoughts stretch like cats in a patch of sun. Your brain loves this. It might not say thank you. But this calm, undemanding state, is when the real repair begins. It is when the brain connects stray ideas, consolidates learning, and sweeps the mental floor, all without needing you to lift a finger. Even now, your default mode network is active. That quiet internal system that hums when you are not focused on the outside world. It is what lets your mind wander, what ties past and future together, what stitches loose threads of memory into meaning. It is not wasted time. It is necessary time. Your brain is not a computer that runs faster with more pressure. It is a living system. A garden, a tide pool, a place where ideas bloom in cycles, and quiet is not an enemy but a prerequisite. Historians still argue whether earlier scientists understood this. The industrial age loved metaphors of gears and engines. The brain was a machine. More output meant more success. But now we know. The brain is more like a forest. Too much light and some parts wither. Too little and growth slows. It needs seasons. It needs rest. So you stop trying to push. You stop asking if you could do more, activate more, be more. You are already enough. Your brain is already doing more than you realize every second of every day. And tonight it gets to rest. You imagine it now. The whole landscape of your mind. A few dim lights glowing. Gentle pulses in the background. The occasional ripple of memory. And beneath it all, a calm, steady hum that says, "This is fine. This is enough. You are doing exactly what you should be," which is absolutely nothing. You rest now in that rare space between full awareness and gentle drift, a quiet shelf of thought where nothing has to be solved, and nothing insists on being remembered. Here your brain is still active, but it is not asking for anything. And maybe in this stillness you begin to realize something surprising. Your brain is not a supercomputer. You have heard that metaphor before. People say it all the time. The brain is like a computer. It stores data. It processes input. It runs calculations. But that is only partly true. And the part that is false is where the magic actually happens. Yes, your brain has circuits. Yes, it runs on electricity. But it is not neat. It is not linear. It does not have folders or a desktop or a trash bin. If anything, it is more like a very large group chat that is constantly being updated, reinterpreted, and occasionally ignored. You could compare your brain to a battery. It runs on energy. When energy runs low, it slows. It falters. And when energy is restored through rest, food, movement, it brightens again. But even then, it is not like a phone or a flashlight. The power does not just light up a bulb. It fuels billions of tiny processes, each with its own rhythm, its own need, its own quiet importance. One mainstream fact: the brain operates using both electrical and chemical signals. Neurons communicate with electric pulses, but the space between them, the synapse, is bridged with chemicals called neurotransmitters. These are not digital. They are not clean. They are messy, analog, and beautifully unpredictable. That is the part computers cannot do. A computer processes logic, zeros and ones. If this, then that. Your brain does something else. It builds intuition. It connects unrelated things. It gets distracted. It makes art. It creates stories where there were none. You do not compute sadness. You feel it. You do not download love. You remember it as warmth in your chest, the shape of a voice, the pause before a laugh. That is not something a machine can do. One quirky fact: researchers have tried to simulate the human brain using massive supercomputers. In one attempt, it took 40 minutes for a machine the size of a warehouse to simulate just 1 second of 1% of human brain activity. Historians still argue whether artificial intelligence will ever truly replicate human thought or just continue to mimic its outer edges. Clever, yes, but never quite messy enough to be real. So the next time someone tells you the brain is like a hard drive, smile. Then imagine your brain rolling its metaphorical eyes. Because hard drives do not dream. They do not get déjà vu. They do not cry during commercials or forget where they parked or imagine what clouds might taste like if they were snacks. Your brain does all of that while juggling body temperature, keeping you upright, and remembering how to blink. It is not trying to be perfect. It is trying to be useful, which is a better goal, really. This is why multitasking does not work the way people think it does. The brain can switch between tasks, but not instantly. Each switch costs energy, and over time those switches drain your focus. That is not a flaw. That is a feature. Your brain wants you to pay attention to one thing, deeply, gently, fully. Right now that one thing is rest. You feel it now, the slowdown. Like switching from a loud, flashing web page to a simple blank screen. a stillness in your thoughts, the quiet confirmation that nothing is required of you in this moment. Historians still argue whether thinkers from earlier centuries, those who called the brain a divine sponge or a sacred organ, were onto something poetic. They may not have known about neurons, but they understood that the brain was something more than meat and logic, something mysterious, fluid, alive. Your thoughts are not files. They are ripples. Your emotions are not code. They are tides. And tonight there is no need to compute, no need to be efficient, no downloads, no upgrades, just breath, just stillness, just you. Your brain is not asking for performance. It is asking for patience, and you are giving it exactly that. You stay soft now, floating gently on the idea that your brain is not a machine, not a device to be optimized, but a living, shifting garden of sparks and meaning. So why then does pop culture keep whispering that there's more to unlock? That hidden inside you is a genius, a psychic, a mind control master just waiting to be triggered by the right pill, the right meditation, or a very dramatic lightning strike. Let's take a detour, not into science, but into fiction, into stories where the myth of using 100% of your brain turns you into something more than human. Maybe you have seen it in movies. Someone takes a mystery drug, and suddenly they are fluent in Latin, hacking satellites with their thoughts, dodging bullets because they can predict motion with godlike precision. They float above the city. Their eyes glow a little. They start talking in slow, echoey sentences. Everyone else looks confused while they see everything. It's fun to imagine, right? That there is something locked away, something waiting. But that's not how it works. That version of the brain is a fantasy, a convenient story device. Like radioactive, spiders, or time-traveling phone booths, beautiful, entertaining, wildly inaccurate. One mainstream historical fact. The 2014 film Lucy made this myth its central premise. The character unlocks greater and greater percentages of her brain, evolving into something unrecognizable. The movie was stylish, but neuroscientists everywhere sighed loudly. The truth is more grounded. Your brain does not withhold its power from you. It is not a stingy landlord. You are not renting 10% of the top floor, while 90% waits behind a velvet rope. The real magic is that your brain already gives you everything it has, just not all at once. It's more like a library than a vault. You can access what you need when you need it, but trying to read every book at the same time, not helpful, just messy. Still, fiction loves the myth, telepathy, telekinesis, clairvoyance. Characters who unlock their brains can move objects, hear thoughts, control machines. It makes for good stories, and it makes us wonder, could any of it be true? Here's your quirky tidbit of the night. In the 1970s, the U.S. government actually funded research into psychic phenomena, the Stargate Project. Real budget, real scientists. They wanted to know if people could remote view, that is, see distant places with just their mind. The results were mixed. Some say it showed promise. Others say it showed wishful thinking. Historians still argue whether the entire project was brilliant fringe science or a Cold War fever dream in a lab coat. But these ideas persist. People want to believe there is more. That beyond daily life, beyond bills and grocery lists and morning traffic, lies a hidden door in the brain, one that opens into greatness. And maybe there is, but not in the way movies suggest. Maybe it is not telekinesis. Maybe it is creativity. Maybe it is compassion. Maybe the fullest version of your brain is not about power, but presence. The ability to sit with pain, to recognize beauty, to remember your favorite person's laugh, even when they are far away. The mind is not a box. It is a landscape, and you are already walking through it, every day, every moment. Historians still argue whether Leonardo da Vinci was a genius because of brain structure, curiosity, or sheer practice. Some say he saw more. Others say he simply paid attention. Maybe he used his full brain not by unlocking some hidden room, but by exploring every hallway that was already open. And you can do that too. Slowly, gently, not by pushing, not by forcing, but by noticing, letting your brain follow its own rhythms, letting your thoughts drift without trying to catch them. You are not missing anything. You are not locked out. You are already inside. Right now, your brain is doing something extraordinary. It is listening. It is imagining. It is processing meaning, tone, rhythm, emotion, memory, all at once. It is lighting up and calming down in waves, quiet and constant. There is no secret circuit, no buried treasure, no locked door. The story of the 100% brain is just that, a story. And here you are in a better one. You're resting now in a more grounded reality, with your thoughts stretched out like laundry on a line, swaying gently in a quiet breeze. You've let go of superpowers and glowing foreheads and now find yourself wandering backwards through time, back before modern science, before brain scans and neurons, back when people didn't know what the brain was, but still tried to explain what it did. You step into ancient Egypt. The air is dry, the sky cloudless. You're surrounded by massive stone temples and the slow, deliberate language of hieroglyphs. The Egyptians knew how to preserve a body. Mummification was their science. But when it came to the brain, they were less reverent. In fact, they scooped it out through the nose. To them, the heart was the seat of intelligence. The brain? A filler, useful for cooling blood maybe, but not for thinking. When someone died, they would remove and discard the brain, but carefully preserve the heart in a sacred jar. It wasn't until much later that anyone thought differently. One mainstream historical fact: Hippocrates in ancient Greece was among the first to argue that the brain, not the heart, controlled thought and emotion. He called it the seat of intelligence, which at the time was a radical claim. But even then, without tools, they were still guessing. The early Greeks thought the brain was made of 4 fluids, or humors, and that imbalance among these liquids caused sickness, emotion, and personality quirks. Happy? Too much yellow bile. Sad? Your black bile needs adjusting. Brain fog? Clearly your phlegm is misbehaving. Not a perfect model, but they were trying. Historians still argue whether these ancient theories slowed down science or laid the groundwork for more accurate thinking. Later, in the Middle Ages, thinkers leaned back toward mysticism. The brain was where the soul whispered. It had cavities where animal spirits floated around. They imagined tiny, invisible beings managing thoughts like bureaucrats at their desks. Your headache was not dehydration. It was clearly the spirits arguing over paperwork. It wasn't until the 1600s that we got our first glimpse of the brain as anatomy. A man named Thomas Willis made detailed sketches of its folds and curves, studying patients and matching injuries to function. He did not have microscopes. He did not know about neurons, but he noticed patterns. Damage to certain areas caused speech loss. Others altered behavior. The mystery began to unfold, and you, lying still now, are connected to all of them. To the mummifiers, the philosophers, the medieval scribes. You are a modern thinker with ancient questions. What is the brain? Where does the self live? Why does it sometimes feel like a stranger is driving your thoughts? One quirky note. In some medieval texts, the brain was said to have animalistic and rational chambers. The animal part dealt with hunger and desire, the rational part with logic and language. The soul, they believed, floated between these chambers like a cautious guest, trying not to touch the furniture. You imagine that now, a soul pacing through dim corridors, knocking on doors, unsure which thought to think first. Even in the Renaissance, thinkers were still guessing. Leonardo da Vinci filled notebooks with anatomical drawings. He dissected cadavers, sketched their skulls, traced blood vessels like cartographers mapping a new world. His brain studies were beautiful, intricate, and occasionally wrong. But they helped shift the conversation, from mystery to mechanism, from magic to biology. Historians still argue whether these early dissections were acts of science or rebellion. But each cut into flesh revealed something undeniable. The brain wasn't just filler. It was vital. It was central. And then came electricity. In the 18th century, Luigi Galvani discovered that a dead frog's leg could twitch when zapped with an electric spark. This suggested that nerves used electricity. The brain was no longer a jar of goo. It was a lightning field. Now you return to your body here and now, breathing softly, eyes closed, your head resting on the same soft pillow as all these centuries of curiosity. And in that silence, your brain is not wondering what fluid to balance. It is not calling for animal spirits or humors. It is simply being what it is, a living network shaped by time, shaped by questions, shaped by you. You have traveled through eras of confusion and progress. You have watched the brain go from overlooked to overhyped. And through it all, you are reminded that even when people did not understand the brain, they still felt its power. In every poem, in every prayer, in every decision made under starlight, your brain is not new. It is ancient. and it carries echoes of every generation that ever paused to wonder, why do I think? And you tonight are part of that long, quiet wonder. You are still now, but your thoughts begin to stretch forward again, like tendrils moving through soft earth. From ancient temples and candlelit desks, your mind glides back to modern times, where screens glow, notifications ping, and your brain lives in a constant hum of background noise. The age of information, they call it. But sometimes it feels more like the age of overload. You've heard it. You've felt it. Brain fog. The afternoon fade. The moment when your mind feels like a browser with too many tabs open. Some frozen, some playing music from somewhere you can't find. You stare at your phone, then the wall, then your phone again, and none of it really sticks. That fog isn't failure. It's feedback. Your brain isn't lazy. It's overloaded. It's tired of filtering 10,000 decisions a day. It's still managing your heartbeat, your posture, your emotional thermostat, but it's doing it all under a pile of open-loop thoughts. Things to do, things to remember, things you saw but didn't finish reading. One mainstream fact: your brain handles an estimated 70,000 thoughts per day. Not all of them are complete. Some are flickers. Some are loops. Some are half-formed questions like, did I reply to that message? Or what was that actor's name again? It's no wonder things get cloudy. And that's not even counting input from the outside world. Ads, texts, headlines, dings and buzzes, and blue light blinking at 3 a.m. Your brain was not built for this. It evolved to track rustling leaves and facial expressions, not 12 different group chats arguing about dinner plans. So the fog rolls in, not to punish you but to protect you. It says, let's cool this down. Let's take a beat. Let's stare out the window for a minute and forget what we were worried about. You lie here now under the weightless quiet of your room. No pings, no tasks. Just the soft, slow processing of a brain finally allowed to wander. And wandering is where some of your best thinking happens. You know it. That moment in the shower when the answer appears. That idea you scribble at 1:12 a.m. That name you couldn't recall earlier, now back in your mind like it never left. This is your default mode network at work again. Not focused, but fluid. Not solving, but floating. Historians still argue whether creative breakthroughs throughout history, from Archimedes' bathtub epiphany to Einstein's thought experiments, were born from conscious effort or quiet drift. It may be that the very act of not thinking directly is what allows new connections to form. You feel that now. Not effort, not force, just a little space between the noise. Enough room for thoughts to settle like dust in a sunbeam, and yet modern life doesn't make much room for drift. You're told to hustle, optimize, maximize. Even rest is turned into a checklist. Did you meditate? Did you journal? Did you do your gratitude practice while exfoliating and hitting 10,000 steps? Sometimes your brain just wants a nap. Here's your quirky tidbit. The Japanese have a word, tsundoku, which means the act of acquiring books and letting them pile up without reading them. It's not shameful. It's human. A symbol of desire to learn, to explore, even if the brain can't quite keep up. Your thoughts are like that too. Piling gently, waiting, not wrong, just not ready. So tonight as you drift, you let that pressure go. You don't need to finish every thought. You don't need to remember everything. Your brain is not failing when it forgets where your keys are. It's prioritizing, editing, choosing rest over panic, choosing sleep over data. You are not a hard drive. You are not storage. You are a river. Things pass through. They swirl, pause, and move on. Historians still argue whether early Eastern philosophies understood this better than science did. Concepts like empty mind and non-attachment may not sound scientific, but they echo something neuroscience is only beginning to quantify, that the quiet brain is not empty. It is engaged in a different kind of work, a deeper kind of integration. And you are doing that now, not cramming facts, not chasing ideas. Just listening, letting your brain breathe, letting the fog drift gently across the lake of thought without needing to clear it. There is no deadline here, no quiz, no point system, just the soft knowledge that everything your brain is doing tonight, this rest, this repair, this processing, matters more than you realize. You are not falling behind. You are falling asleep. You are further now than you expected to be, deeper in stillness, wrapped in the quiet architecture of your own thoughts, your brain humming not with effort but with rhythm. There is no spotlight on any one idea, just a calm turning of gears, like the soft click of a well-tuned watch. And as your breath evens, your brain continues its quiet work, not trying to do everything, not chasing brilliance, but simply keeping you balanced. Because that, more than any myth of full activation, is what your brain excels at: balance. Constant, delicate, breathtakingly complex balance. Consider everything it is doing right now. Regulating your heartbeat, smoothing your breath, releasing just enough melatonin to tip you toward sleep. Your muscles soften, your temperature lowers slightly, and your thoughts shift from sharp edges to soft outlines. This is not accident. It is design. One mainstream fact to comfort you: the human brain consumes about 20% of your body's total energy, even though it makes up only about 2% of your weight. That is a huge cost for one organ. So the brain evolved to make every bit of that energy count. It learned to rest when possible, to shut off visual processing when you close your eyes, to power down focus networks when there's nothing pressing to solve. It doesn't waste fuel. It doesn't spin its wheels. It works smarter, not harder. You see this even in how it handles emotion. When stress is high, the amygdala gets louder, pulling focus toward danger. But when calm returns, other regions take over. Areas for reasoning, empathy, reflection. You're not stuck in one mode. Your brain shifts based on need, like a ship turning slowly toward calmer waters. Here's a quirky tidbit. Researchers studying Tibetan monks found that years of meditation seemed to reshape the brain's default state. Regions linked to compassion and focus were stronger, more connected. It suggested that the brain isn't just reactive. It can be trained to find balance more easily. Historians still argue whether this is due to structural change or simply refined use. But the result is the same: more calm, less chaos. So as you lie still, you realize your brain does not want to be firing on all cylinders at all times. That's not power. That's burnout. Your brain prefers waves, surges and rests, bursts and quiet. It functions like breath, inhale, exhale, think, pause, wake, sleep. The myth of using 100% of your brain paints a picture of nonstop performance. But the truth is, even peak thinkers, scientists, artists, explorers, spend more time wandering than producing. Einstein once said he spent most of his time thinking about the same idea from different angles. Virginia Woolf took long, silent walks. Nikola Tesla stared at walls. They weren't wasting time. They were incubating. And you are incubating now. Not ideas for world-changing inventions, maybe, but something just as important: rest, repair, rebalancing. Because your brain is not just a hub of thought. It is a sensor, a regulator, a caretaker. It processes blood pressure, blood sugar, gut feedback, hormone levels. It listens to your entire body and adjusts accordingly, without your asking. And when one part falters, others compensate. This is how stroke patients relearn movement, how blind individuals develop heightened hearing, how dancers feel music in their bones. The brain shifts, adapts, reassigns, balance again. Historians still argue whether the earliest doctors, thousands of years ago, recognized this resilience. Some describe the brain as a vessel that could refill and reroute, even when damaged. A poetic version of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, long before we had the science to name it. So tonight, you do not need to push. You do not need to unlock anything. You simply need to allow what is already working to keep doing. So quietly, elegantly, without applause. Let your thoughts rise and fall without grabbing them. Let them pass like clouds across your mind's sky. Let your body sink further into the mattress. Let your breath come and go like the slow tide. You are not here to be more. You are here to be still. And stillness is not the absence of thought. It is the space where thought can breathe. You are giving your brain exactly what it wants.
Not stimulation, not fireworks.
Not a flood of noise, just peace, just time, just the chance to balance itself. You drift now into the final stretch of this journey, not because you've reached the end, but because your brain has gone quiet enough to let go of the question. The myth of unlocking 100% no longer seems so mysterious or necessary. You've seen what the brain really does, how much it carries, how many stories it holds, how tirelessly it works to keep you human. And so now you soften even further. The thoughts get lighter, the rhythm slower. There is no more exploring to do tonight, no more corridors to walk. Just stillness and breath, and trust that your brain is doing everything it needs to, and nothing it doesn't. Because here's the secret. You've been circling all night. You already use 100% of your brain, not all at once, not in the way movies pretend, but over the course of your day, your week, your life, it all gets used. Movement, emotion, reasoning, reflex, laughter, imagination, grief, every part of your brain plays its role. And it's not about more, it's about enough. One mainstream fact: studies show that even the silent parts of the brain, the ones once believed to be dormant, light up when the right task comes along. The brain is not wasteful, it is just particular. What seems inactive in one moment becomes vital in the next. You are not walking around with mental superpowers locked away. You're walking around with a masterpiece in motion, a symphony of sparks and signals. Playing a song so complex you forget it's even happening. One quirky little note to end on. Some scientists once mapped parts of the brain by electrically stimulating them. During open skull surgeries, they discovered that touching certain spots made people recall vivid memories, feel sudden emotions, even laugh uncontrollably. Historians still argue whether those reactions were genuine memories or just echoes. But either way, the point was made: your brain is not quiet. It is packed. And now, in this final breath of the night, you let that fact soothe you. You are not missing anything. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are already enough. Your brain is already working. And it is tired. So let's rest now together. Let's let go of the myth and lean into the reality that the greatest thing your brain can do tonight is nothing. Just be still. Just repair. Just dream. Now everything softens. Your thoughts stretch one final time, like a cat before curling into sleep. Your breath falls into a slower rhythm. The weight of your body melts into the mattress. And your brain, that brilliant quiet companion, begins to pull down its shades. There is nothing left to chase. No more circuits to light. The journey is over and the destination is here, this moment. This silence, this peace. Let the weight of information slide from your shoulders. Let the pace of the world outside this room fade into mist. There is nothing you need to remember. Nothing you need to do. Your mind is untangling itself, thread by gentle thread, until all that remains is a steady hum beneath the waves of sleep. This is your time to let go. Of effort, of doubt, of the idea that you should be more. You are already whole. Already present. Already home. Imagine the lights dimming inside your head, one room at a time. No sudden dark. Just a soft fade. Your senses quiet. Your heartbeat slow. Your thoughts moving like lazy leaves in a calm current. You do not need to try to sleep. It will come. Like a tide that always knows its way back to shore. So rest now. Let your brain keep humming. Keep healing. Keep holding you. Without noise, without needing to be more. It is working even now, even here. And it is so proud of you. Good night, sweet dreams.